Hi everybody, this is Steven. It's been a long time since the last time I posted some videos, but I'm trying to correct that and go back to it this time around. Uh, the subject of today's discussion would be to show you my collection of Supergirl slash Superwoman slash Power Girl action figures that I have in my collection. So to get things started, I will start talking about Supergirl herself. So let's start with her first appearance when she showed up in the comics in the distant 1959. This is how she looked, and this was her costume. Quite different from the modern look, as you can tell. And her birth name is Kara Zor-El, and she came from the city of Argo on Krypton. And when she landed on Earth in a rocket, just like Superman did, she had to assume a secret identity, and secret identity in her case would be Linda Lee, and she was an orphan at first. Later on, she gets adopted by the Danvers family, and then that's practically where her adventures begin. Of course, these origin stories came and went and changed as the decades went by, and in the end, she met her demise. She met her demise in a story in 1985, in a storyline called The Crisis on Infinite Earths, where she was killed fighting a powerful villain called the Anti-Monitor, where the fate of all Earths out there was at stake. So in a final fight against him, she gave her life in order to stop him. That's when she was practically erased from the DC continuity. And at that time, this is how she looked. This is her costume at that point in time. She had numerous changes on her costume, and not just on her story, as time went by. There were some that were specifically based on the art of different artists. For example, this is the Supergirl based on the art of Alex Ross from his run on the Justice League comics. And then we have another Supergirl who is based on the art of Ed McGuinness. Then Mattel had its take on making Supergirl, and the way they made her to look this would be one version of her. She came out around the time of the DC Universe Classics, roughly around that time, and prior to that she had another version in the prequel series before the DC Universe Classics, which was called DC Heroes, that mostly focused on Batman and Superman characters. So this would be the Mattel version. Interesting to note that when she landed on Earth, she was known as Linda Lee, or Supergirl when she transforms, and she was later known for those of you who are familiar with the Supergirl TV series that runs on CW, she's known as Kara Kent. And also the main fact about her is that she is the cousin of Superman. And she is also a niece of Kal-El's father, and his mother, and his mother is her aunt as well. So going back to the other figures I have here, this would be another version of her that she looks more like in her teenage years, and this is from the toy line again by Mattel called the DC Superhero Girls, that also had a cartoon series going. So this would be one of the regular sized figurines that they released at that time. And she doesn't look that bad. I mean, she's not a highly sought after item by the collectors or anything, but I think she looks okay for the character she represents. She has a tiny bit of a problem standing, however, but let's just see if I can make her stand. Maybe even lean her a little bit. Okay, there we go. That's better. Then the next one that would come forward is the DC Collectibles New 52 version of Supergirl, and she comes with a little piece of kryptonite that she's holding in her hand, and her costume looks quite different altogether. It's a slightly resembled, at least color-wise and color scheme-wise, to her classic costume, but it looks quite different in general. Then the next one would be the DC Icons, again by DC Collectibles, and by the way, DC Collectibles is also known as DC Direct prior to that, and they went through some changes, and I understand recently their office is closed down under Warner Brothers, so I am not sure will they be making any more figures and such. For the moment, it seems that the DC Direct / DC Collectibles is out of business, which is a sad news for the collectors. But this is her version from the DC Icons line that came just prior to the DC Essentials one, if you guys are familiar with that one, which also has a version of Supergirl, which I don't have at this time. So here she comes in her classic look with somewhat longer boots, but in general this is pretty much her classic look, the usual look. Let's put her right there. Now, at some point after the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline where Supergirl dies in a fight, there was an introduction of another young lady who would don a modified costume of a Supergirl, and it's not Kara. It's a different character altogether that was created for that purpose. Now this other character, and you can read more about it on Wikipedia, which I strongly recommend, because this the history of Supergirl and some of the other girls who wore similar costume is quite complex. So there's quite a bit of information there, but I'll just give you the gist of it. So there is another girl who assumed the identity of a Supergirl, and she's from Earth, so she's Earthborn. And she got herself entangled with some dark cults and such. And an entity, if I'm not mistaken, even because I'm not familiar with that story in particular, called the Matrix, tried to save her life when she was badly wounded by one of the members of these dark occult groups. And in order to trying to save her life, that Matrix being or a spirit, or I don't know how would I classify it, was merged together with this young woman's body, and her name was actually Linda Danvers. Anyway, when they were merged together accidentally, that gave birth to a completely new Supergirl. And that would be this Supergirl right here. Her costume, as you can tell, is very different. She almost has, many collectors know her as a cheerleader outfit Supergirl, which kind of supposedly does resemble, and her story and her biography also went quite far in regards to her adventures. And at some point she actually meets the Supergirl, the original one. There was a crossover story at some point, and she also met Superman on the parallel Earth, with whom she fell in love and had a daughter. So that story is quite complex, I can tell you that much. For those of you who want to explore further, please refer to the Wikipedia biography of Linda Danvers here. So this version here would be made, or at least it was made by DC Direct some 17-18 years ago, and it came in the lineup of the Superman Doomsday storyline, even though she did not appear in Superman Doomsday. The Supergirl that did appear in that storyline is not her. That Supergirl that appeared in the Superman Doomsday line was just a clone that was created for the purpose, and he had shape-shifting abilities. So that Supergirl has nothing to do with this particular one or with Kara Zor-El. So that's yet again a completely different character altogether. So that would be one version of Linda Danvers, and then here is another. This version of Linda Danvers that we already mentioned is done by Mattel, and she was done close to the time that the DC Direct one, or just soon after the DC Direct one came about. And the outfit is still the same, the colors are somewhat different, and I think in general they did get the figure pretty okay. The face could have been better, but in reality it's nice to have at least one more version of her in this type of outfit. So this is Linda Danvers Supergirl, another version of her that came from Mattel. And then last for now that I will mention would be a Superwoman who is actually Kara Zor-El, but based on a storyline from DC called the Elseworlds. Now, what does Elseworlds mean? Elseworlds means that you take the familiar characters like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and others, including Supergirl here, and you put them into a different time and space and tell a completely different story. That series was quite known, and some of the characters from DC Direct were actually made. Some of those versions of characters were made into DC Direct action figures. So this is one particular version of Supergirl herself, where she is called Superwoman because she's already in her prime and more mature, and she is a main hero on Earth where Superman has already died long ago. I believe, because I read that issue a long time ago, I believe her cousin died when he was landing on Earth, and or something along those lines. But anyway, she would be the only superpower being because she was not able to save him. So she donned the mantle of a Superwoman and fought for justice, and she had an ally in the shape of a Batwoman. So the two of them would fight the crime and evil on Earth together. And she looks quite interesting, not just for the fact that her costume looks different, but she also sports a short hairstyle, which is an interesting take. And unlike many figures here that you see on the display, she actually has Superman's yellow letter symbol on her cape, which is not common to see. Most of these figures omit that detail, and for some reason it's not printed on. But it's nice to see when there is a figure such as this one that actually does have that. So once more, this is Kara Zor-El from the Elseworld story. Let's just put her over there, and hopefully she doesn't cause me an avalanche, because she always needs a plastic stand to be able to stand, otherwise she can easily topple down. That's one thing I would recommend if you guys ever get her in particular. Make sure that she can safely stand on her own, because she could easily take a dive off your shelf. So let's see how is this gonna work. So anyway, in my next video, there we go. In my next video, I am planning to continue my conversation about the next version of Supergirl, and that would be her appearance as a Power Girl in her more mature look, and of course where the costume is quite different, and a bit of her origin is somewhat different as well. But I will also include in that other video, I will also include other ladies or other incarnations of Supergirl / Superwoman that were released in a toy form. And that's the plan for the next video. Now, before I bring this video to an end, I would also like to emphasize the aspect of the Linda Danvers here. Now, why in her in particular? I forgot to mention that in some incarnations of her, and she did appear in this exact costume in the Superman animated series from the mid-90s, and she also again appeared in this costume in the Justice League Unlimited as well. So she had appearance in all of them, where she would wear this kind of costume. In in Justice League Unlimited, she would wear this costume at first, and then she would be shown in a costume like this one, which is more of her classic costume. Now, the interesting thing about it is practically that in the Justice League Unlimited, it seems that they unified her classic look together with the Linda Danvers look as if it's one and the same character, but in reality it's not. Because, as I mentioned in the comics, this is not Kara Zor-El. This is Linda Danvers, a completely different character with different origin story and so forth. But in the Justice League Unlimited, they show her as being one and the same person who just progressed from this costume to her classic costume later in the season. So that's in regards to that. Now, the interesting thing about the Justice League Unlimited would also be that the version of her as Power Girl, meaning Kara Zor-El is Power Girl when she's more mature and more grown up, and the costume looks quite different, is that she is also mentioned in the Justice League Unlimited episode, in I believe 2 episodes. What's interesting about that is that she's completely taken to be a separate character, that it's not, that the Power Girl in that cartoon series is not Kara Zor-El, but instead they presented her that she's just a clone of the real Supergirl, who was used by the government, at least in that episode, to destroy the real Supergirl. But anyway, I won't give you more details about that, but certain changes were made in the animated series, and for those of you who are wondering where else she appeared, she also appeared in the 1980s Supergirl movie, which I believe was, at least in my own personal opinion, was not a bad movie at all. I used to watch it many times. It was good for what it was. And then, of course, you have the CW Supergirl, already a long-running TV series, which is part of the Arrowverse, where you can also see her. I don't have the action figure of that particular Supergirl, the way she looks on the Supergirl TV series. I missed out on her, and now it's kind of difficult to find her for a decent price out there. So this is my collection of Supergirls at the moment. There is, of course, a couple of them that I am missing, but I think I managed to get most of the ones because my aim was to always get the versions of her from DC Direct and /DC Collectibles and the few that was made by Mattel. So that's it for now, folks. I hope I did not bore you with my very long story. Please let me know in the comments if which version of these 2 Supergirls would be your favorite and why. And I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.